I'd like to get this hearing started with the Committee of One. Welcome to the hearing of the Budget Subcommittee on Education and Finance. Today we'll be hearing a number of the Governor's budget proposals on a variety of subjects, including high-speed internet for public libraries, the Governor's proposal for innovation in higher education grant proposal, and a discussion on campus student fees at California State University. I would like to start with skipping on the agenda the vote-only calendar and moving to issue number 1, Hastings College of Law. I'd like to invite representatives from the Department of Finance, Legislative Analyst's Office, and Mr. Seward, Chief Financial Officer from the Hastings College of Law. I'd like to start with Finance.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christian Osmeña with the Department of Finance. Pursuant to the administration's multi-year plan for higher education, the 2014-15 governor's budget includes a total of $9.6 million general fund for the Hastings College of the Law, which is a $1.3 million augmentation above 13-14 funding levels. The administration continues to expect that the college will use these resources to make progress toward the following goals: to focus on success, to align its programs with the state's economic, workforce, and civic needs, and to use its resources productively and maintain affordability. The augmentation provided in 2014-15 represents a 2.4% increase in the college's core resources. We define these resources as the college's general fund appropriation and its student tuition and enrollment fee revenues, which are used interchangeably in the college's budget. This percentage increase is equivalent to the growth in core resources proposed for the University of California in the governor's budget. Hastings will hold enrollment fees constant in 2014-15 as required by the administration's multi-year funding plan. However, fee revenues constitute about 4/5 of core resources at Hastings, whereas these revenues constitute about half of the core resources at the UC. Providing an augmentation on the Hastings core resources rather than simply on its general fund appropriation allows the college to address its needs in the context of the state's expectation that it not increase enrollment fees through 2016-17. Your agenda discusses a request from Hastings students for funding to expand 2 public service career programs. Finance did not receive this request for inclusion in the governor's budget. We are considering the request as we develop the May revision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, LAO.
Paul Goziewski with the LAO. As we testified in the overview hearing in this committee, we have several concerns with the governor's multi-year funding plan for UC, CSU, and Hastings that we're talking about today. Most notably, we're just concerned about the amounts that the governor is proposing and the fact that these amounts are not linked with any costs or any other priorities. In the case of Hastings, the governor is proposing to give Hastings a base budget increase while the university is decreasing enrollment. Normally, when one of the segments would decrease enrollment, you would expect savings. Our understanding is Hastings plans to use the resources to reduce the student-to-faculty ratio, but our concern is that that's a decision that you, the legislature, may want to make and not defer to the segments to be making these decisions about how much funding to provide and what they should do with it. For UC and CSU, as you heard a few weeks ago, we came up with an alternative budget that we had built for them, and we'd be happy to do the same for Hastings if you're looking for an alternative to the governor's approach.
Thank you. And we'd like to welcome Mr. Seward from the Hastings College of Law.
Thank you very much. The 14-15 governor's budget proposal recognizes the differences between Hastings and our funding composition as contrasted to UC and CSU. And we're very appreciative and thankful for the Department of Finance for doing the adjustment based on equalizing the benefits that is afforded to Hastings, comparable to that of UC and CSU. So that's clearly a positive. We are also very pleased to be in a position to keep enrollment fees flat for our 3rd consecutive year, and the governor's Proposition 30 initiative certainly facilitated that effort, and we, on behalf of our students, are quite thankful for that. In terms of the priorities of the institution, we are indeed reducing our enrollment. The job market for law school students is extremely challenging. We feel it is imperative for us to align our output to the needs of the marketplace. And when a law degree annual tuition only $44,000 a year, our average debt at graduation is $120,000. Clearly, the burdens that law students have to cope with are quite challenging, and we believe it is the right thing to do. It aligns the marketplace to reduce our enrollment 20% over 3 years. Again, as a 3-year program, it takes 3 years to cycle through. So we're going to be stabilizing at a JD enrollment of about 960, 970 students. To the legislative analyst's point, for many years we had sought additional funding to bring our student-faculty ratio in line with the student-faculty ratio of the other UC law schools. Berkeley, UCLA, Irvine, Davis, the student-faculty ratio is measured by ABA data of roughly 11 to 1, 12 to 1. Hastings has a 17 to 1 student-faculty ratio, and so there's two ways of addressing that. One is to increase the faculty, and the other way is to decrease the students. And given, again, the challenges in terms of the marketplace, we felt more responsible to address to downsize our enrollment to a more appropriate level. And the funding provided by the governor's budget helps us do that, at the same time, again, not increasing fees. As to the proposals, we are working with our students, 2 proposals, one for summer public interest fellowship grant amounts similar to the State University Capital Fellows Program, and a second proposal for Lawyers for America, a way of addressing 2 facts. One, there is a huge level of unmet legal need, and the ability of Hastings, as well as future expansion to other law schools, to help fill that gap while at the same time providing educational benefit to our students in their 3rd year. And then there's a 1-year post-graduation fellowship involved as well. So, again, we do appreciate having stability in the funding. It has allowed us to plan and move forward on implementation of our strategic plan. We are very pleased to do so, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
All right, thank you. So, to Department of Finance, I tend to agree with the LAO's concern raised that why are we increasing funding for Hastings by 15% when they're talking about decreasing the enrollment. I mean, I understand that as a law school graduate myself, I understand the challenges of the skyrocketing tuition that's being faced by Hastings law students, but those are challenges faced by everyone, including Hastings law students. Of course, the size of the debt, I mean, the tuition of 43, what is the current Hastings tuition?
Actually, about tuition only, not counting health center fees, $43,486, about
Okay.
44 grand.
All right.
Not counting living expenses or books.
So the figure in the agenda for 14-15, that's right. Okay, so we have it here. Is pretty extraordinary and unfortunate, and I can especially relate to the concerns for those students who want to pursue public service. I mean, I went to UCLA for law school, and I was a recipient of the UCLA Public Interest Law Foundation stipend to work at a public interest civil rights organization. And so I can fully appreciate how it's hard. I mean, we're basically steering our students toward the legal jobs that will allow them to be able to pay off this six-figure plus debt that they're graduating with. But Department of Finance, what is your response to the LAO's concern about increasing funding by 15% with decreasing enrollment?
Well, I think we would, first, I think, as you mentioned, the primary cost constraint in future years under the administration's plan, general fund represents primarily the source of additional revenues for Hastings, and so they are facing increased costs both for the retirement systems and for other mandatory costs. So as we have with UC and CSU, our approach is to give the segment, the college, the discretion to determine how, instead of meeting specific enrollment targets, how best to meet the state's outcome goals. And I think our outcome goals for Hastings aren't dramatically different than they are for the other segments, to ensure that their programs are aligned with workforce needs and that their students are graduating at higher rates in a timely way. So Hastings has demonstrated in their budget plan, we think that they have the best ability to demonstrate how to use those additional resources, and we've provided flexibility for them to do so.
I guess my concern, though, I can see, the more I think about it, how the issue of the declining enrollment is tied to the issue of educating more law students to pursue careers in public service. I mean, I forget the exact numbers, but when I went to law school in the early 90s, over 90% of my classmates went to work in basically the medium to large size law firms that would allow them to pay these skyrocketing tuition and the debt that they're facing, but it's not exactly encouraging our graduates. We're not educating our students to serve the people of the state of California. We're educating and graduating law students to serve a increasingly smaller and elite portion of our state population, namely the clients of small to or medium to large size law firms. And so I am concerned with this. Are there any other comments regarding the Hastings situation? Mr. Ting.
Well, Hastings is in my district. It's right next to my district, and I know that over the years because of their unique status to UC and their somewhat semi-independent nature, they have gone through a lot fiscally. I did feel like that this was a fairly small amount of money in terms of our overall budget allocation. I think your points are right on, and that obviously I think we need to take a look at how this allocation is relative to the overall UC budget, and obviously what other comparable law schools are getting at the various UCs. But it seemed like a fairly small item, and Hastings in particular, I'm a little bit more familiar with, just because they're in San Francisco, than the other law schools, but they have a very, very strong community public interest component. They actually do a significant amount of community service, community involvement. When I was at the Asian Law Caucus, most of our volunteer law students came from UC Hastings. So they in particular have a lot of sort of practicing professors who are very much geared toward community service. So that's why I think this is such a critical need, in particular for this university, given their one of their core functions is really getting law students ready to serve the community and getting into these public interest fields. I know that in my former capacity at the Asian Law Caucus that we really relied on Hastings for a lot of volunteer help, a lot of volunteer work to work with low-income families on immigration issues, housing issues, employment issues. So again, anything that we could do to help students, if they so choose to want to go down this path, I'm very, very encouraged by.
Well, again, the governor's budget does provide for a funding adjustment that allows us to achieve parity with UC and CSU. Given the different mix, we're at 17% state general fund. So when the if one were simply to apply a 5% increase to our general fund base, which is quite diminished because of the state's fiscal challenges over the years, it results in a far different outcome. And I believe that the governor's budget equalizes that and it allows us to achieve parity. And again, I want to go back to the student-faculty ratio because the fee structures at all the UC schools are effectively the same. They're equivalent. We do have costs as a standalone institution that our other sister schools in the UC system do not have to absorb. But from a student perspective, having this, a student should have the same quality of experience at UC Hastings as they do at UCLA, UC Irvine, with, again, those schools having much more favorable student-faculty ratios. So our strategic initiative to, decrease our enrollment over a 3-year period is intended to allow, as one of the byproducts, one of the benefits, a alignment of our student-faculty ratio more closely to that of the other UC law schools. And again, our students are paying roughly the same amount. So we do have a very strong public interest commitment. The Tenderloin has many unmet, unserved needs. The school has been in the forefront of public interest for the 20 years that I've been there, for many, many years before then. Our LEOP program is a nationally recognized gateway program that allows 20% of our student body entering classes of the LEOP program, giving students the opportunities that they otherwise would not have if their qualifications were based solely on metrics. I mean, we take into account life challenges, disadvantages. For instance, if a student, child of a military family, they went to 6 or 7 different high schools during their high school career, and there are consequences of that type of disruption. We look at their applications and we make determinations based on their likelihood of success, not necessarily just their metrics. So I think the school's commitment to access is well demonstrated and has been for decades.
I can appreciate that. I guess, so you're saying that the governor's proposal will bring Hastings up to par with the other UC law schools in terms of the state support, the percentage of the Hastings budget as being attributed to state support?
It will bring us up to par in terms of the benefit derived from the governor's multi-year funding plan. In terms of the base allocations, it's very difficult to make those comparisons.
Okay.
It is a positive outcome for the college and one that we support.
Okay. If I could make one additional point. The governor's proposal treats Hastings similar to UC and CSU in terms of the percentage increase in funding. But because the segments have different cost increases, and because the governor's proposal doesn't take that into account, the segments have different ability to do things with the money that he's giving them. So, for instance, UC is not talking about reducing student-to-faculty ratios with the governor's proposal because there isn't enough money given their cost increases, whereas for Hastings, they can use the amount provided by the governor to meet their cost increases and decrease student-to-faculty ratios. So I think that's our main concern with the governor's approach, is it's largely deferring to the segments to make these choices with these, although the amounts that are being provided are intended to treat them equally, that what they can do with the amounts is quite different.
All right. And to clarify, the governor's proposal allows us to narrow the gap in terms of student-faculty ratio. It does not allow us to eliminate the gap. So it is trending in the right direction, but it is not a solution to that issue, and we'll have to work on that on a go-forward basis.
Okay. We are not going to take action on this today. We're going to hold it open until they may revise. But just on the points of the student programs that are discussed in the agenda, so is it the proposal of the Hastings Law School to use out of the state support funds dollars to support the Public Interest Law Foundation and the Lawyers for America?
No, that would be an augmentation over and above.
Over and above the 15% increase that the governor is proposing?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I am, again, I think our public law schools should do a better job of, educating and producing more lawyers who will serve the public, rather than, just turning out, vast majority of corporate lawyers. And so I'm very supportive of the Public Interest Law Foundation and these type of programs. My concern is that we're supporting these programs and not supporting similar programs at other law schools. I know that there is a Public Interest Law Foundation at UCLA, and I assume that there is one at all of our law schools, and to just support the program at Hastings and not those at the other law schools doesn't seem right to me. Any other comments from the committee? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's get a roll call.
Mr. Morosuchi?
Here.
Mr. Chavez? Here. Mr. Ting?
All right. And it is my understanding that Mr. DeBobne is absent today, and so we will have to proceed with 4 members as soon as Mr. Nastandi joins us, unless we can get a substitute. Why don't we move to the vote-only items at the top of the agenda. We have first the State Library request for reappropriation authority. This is authority that that has previously been authorized to reappropriate, to issue authority for reappropriation to allow them to continue moving back into their remodeled building in the 2014-2015 fiscal year. As discussed in the agenda, I ask for a motion to approve the request. I will second. Roll call, please. This, we can discuss it now, and if you have any questions, but we do not have any scheduled witnesses. I'm not sure if anyone in the audience is, but this is, yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Let's go.
Okay.
Mr. Morosuchi?
Aye.
Mr. Chavez?
Aye.
Mr. Ting?
All right. Moving on then. Issue number 2. Let me clarify. This is also something that has been pre-authorized. So this is a request. CSU Pomona is requesting reappropriation authority to continue their construction project to replace the seismically unsafe administration building. This was originally in the 2013 Budget Act. There was a delay, I believe, and the project was not approved to proceed. And so they have submitted a spring finance letter requesting that $75 million be reappropriated to allow for the project to continue into 2014-2015. So these are not.
Move issue 2, CSU Pomona
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Morosuchi?
Aye.
Mr. Chavez? Aye. Mr. Ting?
Aye.
All right. And third, we have the request from CSU requesting authority to spend $5.8 million in general obligation bonds to fund equipment needs at 3 new buildings at the Monterey Bay, Chico, and East Bay campuses. These are items that have been reviewed by the Department of Finance. Is that correct? Yes. And previously approved in prior budgets. The Monterey Bay project was approved in the 2009 budget. Chico project was approved in the 2010 budget, and the East Bay project was approved in the 2011 budget. And this is asking for the authority to spend those dollars previously approved.
So move.
This is the one I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
The, as I understand, these are bond monies, right? 30-year bond funds. And
That is-
and some of the equipment we're buying is going to be computers and printers, is that correct?
That's correct. Sorry. Visan, one with California State University. Yes, Member Chavez, that does include computers.
So my thought is, computer lifespan is what, 2 years?
Maybe 3, right?
Okay, 3 years, so we're going to use a 30-year bond that we're going to buy something that's going to be no longer value in 3 years. But we're going to be paying it off, the bond, for the next 27 years.
Right. Department of Finance looks at the equipment on a lifetime average of the equipment. So while there are some that are only a few years as far as their lifetime age, there are others that would balance out the life of the 30-year bond.
What piece of equipment would balance out the life of a 3-year life cycle on a computer?
We have a lot of desks and chairs, bookcases, casework that would be included in the equipment as movable equipment.
So you're going to have chairs that are going to last for like 100 years or something? Or?
Well, we do still have a number of the steel prison industry furniture throughout the CSU.
That's what my concern is. I'm sorry, I'd love to see the math on that, but I don't think it makes sense. So, using bond funds for facilities, that makes a lot of sense to me, but using it for operational equipment doesn't make sense to me. And unless you can show me the math.
We'd have to run averages for you.
I'd love to see that one. Okay. Well, until I said I can't support this.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee on this item? All right. Why don't we, given Mr. Chavez's questions, give an opportunity to CSU to provide more information on this item, and so we will hold this issue number 3 open.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on then to the issue of the statewide high-speed internet network. I would like to invite representatives of the Department of Finance, Legislative Analyst's Office, and the California State Library to come forward.
Nothing personal.
Welcome. Let's start with Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Matthew Seha, Department of Finance. So the governor's budget proposes a $3.25 million general fund to provide public library access to high-speed internet to better meet the demands of today's library patrons. This includes $2.25 million to allow California's public library branches to access a statewide high-speed internet network and $1 million in one-time basis for grants to public libraries that require equipment upgrades to connect to a high-speed network. Further, the proposed budget bill language requires the California State Library or local libraries to seek other non-general fund resources as necessary to ensure that public libraries have access to the high-speed network. While the governor's budget proposal does not specify which high-speed network the libraries must use, a recent assessment plan concluded that connecting the public libraries to the California Research and Education Network, or CalREN, operated by the Corporation for Education Network Initiatives in California, or CENIC, would be the best solution for libraries. So that concludes my overview. We're happy to answer any questions after you're done.
All right. Why don't we move on to the Legislative Analyst's Office?